Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast is Critical Blast.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Okay, and welcome to Silver Sunday as we tried out our new opening sequence. So yeah, that was what was so funny. Is like I tried to start early, so I scheduled it. You guys know we're using StreamYard. So I tried to schedule it this time. I set it up. I said, okay, I'm going to schedule it and see how that works. And so I went to go live, and it said, you can't go live yet because your stream's not scheduled till 8:05. And I'm like, well, and it said, do you want to start anyway? And I said, yes. And then it was like, it didn't do anything. So Curtis, I said, hey, Curtis, I'll be right back. I'm going to step off in just a second, right? And I come back, and it was live. I'm like, no, wait, what? I'm going to show this.
Exactly. Everybody got a nice view of me checking my emails just kind of methodically. So sorry about that.
Okay, somebody's using a Silverline account, and they said, okay, too funny. And I don't know who that is.
That was me.
Was that you?
I thought I was in the the private chat talking to you. So all sorts of hijinks today.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. My father-in-law's already saying, oh, where did it go? Hello, big dummy. He'll say here. Here we go. Look at that. So welcome to Silver Sunday. I know where some people are. I know where Tommy is on vacation. What the heck's a vacation? Roberta had business come up, and Pete is not feeling well. So we hope Pete gets to feeling better. Mm-hmm. But I don't know where C is. Who else? Who else did I tell you? I
think it's just the three of us potentially.
I think so too. I think it was just me, you, and C. John Martin. Hadn't heard from John. I tagged Mike Belcher because he did send me a message that said he said he might be able to start joining us again. So hopefully he's been able to free up his schedule and will be able to rejoin us, whether that's on Sunday or Wednesday, I don't know, but hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us. Anyway, welcome to Silver Sunday. I am your host tonight. I am Roland Mann. I am the chief cook and bottle washer at Silverline Comics. And Curtis, tell them who you are.
Sure, I'm Curtis Fujita. I'm the creative director at Silverline Comics, and I'm also a artist and a kung fu instructor. And so I'm combining both my passions, and I'm making a comic for Silverline called Shadow Ghost. It's the kung fu comic by a kung fu master. And also, I'm the editor on Kalis, our latest crowdfunding campaign. Kalis, awesome series by Brent Larson and the whole creative team there. So that's us.
Right.
Mhm.
Excellent. And by the way, speaking of Kalis, we are in the final. I don't have that open, so we are in the final minutes. Actually, I'm trying to. I can't talk and type at the same time. So I'm trying to open up both campaigns to see. This is the first time we ever did a dual campaign. So we've got Indiegogo. So we've got the campaign going on Kickstarter, which is just blowing it out of the water. Last time I looked, we had more than doubled our ask. And the last time I looked on Indiegogo, we were still a little bit away from goal, but we're much closer. So we're 404 on Indiegogo, which means we're $96 away from goal on Indiegogo, and we are $23.60 on Kickstarter. We've got 71 backers. We've got 98 minutes to go. So Brent had some personal stuff come up, and we didn't get a chance to really talk about a whole lot of stretch goals. But one of the things I was going to put down at 2250. Well, at first, when Brent and I were talking, of course, we had the convention last weekend. I was like, well, maybe when we hit 2000, and of course, we were like 18 at the time. So maybe when we hit 2000, we'll do this. And before I had a chance to do it, we were past 2000. And so I've been thinking, okay, once we hit 2250, we'll do this. But we've already hit both of those. So I'm just going to include them. And so what I wanted to do is, oh, shoot, it's not in here anymore. You guys have seen the Silverline poster that we have. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to, all physical backers, we are going to, unfortunately, it's going to be folded, but we're going to fold that and put it in your package. And everyone who has a physical, who gets a physical reward for Kalis, whether that be on Indiegogo or on Kickstarter, we are going to send you a Silverline poster. We want to see those on your walls. We want you to take a picture of it when you put it on your wall and go, say, look, Silverline on my wall. So yeah, so we're going to do that. And so yeah, I didn't get a chance to announce it, but you guys have been, everyone who's been back in and sharing the Kickstarter has been doing phenomenal. Like I said, we're at 2360 with now 96 minutes to go. So fantastic. There's a possibility with the next 96 minutes we get to 2,500, and that would be very awesome. We have 71 backers, so really excited about that.
And if I can chime in, Kalis is is a great series. It's really cool. It's our first thing on Indiegogo as far as the whole collected trade paperback. And if I were to give like an elevator pitch on what Kalis is, it's like Captain America: Winter Soldier meets X-Files.
No, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. Very, very different. And I highly recommend it. My favorite part about editing it, I always say, is I got to read everything before anybody else.
First, yeah. That is one of the advantages of being the editors. You get to see things before everybody else does, right? All the way from concept to the artwork. It's one of the things I loved about being an editor in the offices at Malibu. It's kind of like when we got when FedEx would come in with the big dolly with all the artwork. It was kind of like Christmas. He'd bring it in, and of course, we'd all open up the package. Oh, look at this artwork that I got. Look at the artwork that I got. So, Bobby Westgate says, you're on Facebook in Mississippi. What's up, Mississippi? My home state. And Tommy's home state as well. So, and Quentin's home state, although I think Quentin's in Texas now. So it's the home state of a handful of, and Stephen Butler's home state. So, a handful of us. So what else is going on with you, Curtis?
Oh, a lot actually. About to make some big announcements this coming week.
You didn't know, I thought I already saw them on Facebook.
We're like inch by inch, kind of talking about it. But I will say that it has to do with a recording artist named Capitan Wallace, who has a martial arts theme to his music, and the Shadow Ghost comic book are going to be collaborating. So you can kind of put two and two together, but we're saying Tuesday. Tuesday, if you follow our social media, we'll put the word out. So it'll be really
very cool. Very cool. So we'll need to make sure that Tim and the Tuesday folks get a hold of that so they can debut it, premiere it on the That Silverline Show on Tuesday. So very cool.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I can't wait to hear and see more about it. So that's pretty exciting. And you know, Curtis, I don't know that you hear me when I do it, but I quote you all the time now. Like as Curtis says, "Rising tide lifts all boats."
Yes.
And I mentioned that several times at the convention. At the Daytona Beach Comic Book Convention, which we want to make sure we shout out and say thank you to Daytona Beach Comic Con, our sponsors, one of our sponsors. We appreciate Daytona Beach Comic Con very much. There were 9 of us. There were 9 Silverliners at Daytona Beach Comic Con this last. And I told PJ, my wife PJ, I said, I think I'm going to put a little video together that has the pictures that we had, the Daytona Beach Comic Con exclusive covers, and we did a couple of lives. I know that I always, when it's over, I always think, man, I should have gone live a little bit more.
Yeah.
But you know, I get so wrapped up in the show and you know, talking to fans that are coming by, and then talking to others there at the show, I don't always remember or think about going live. So anyway, so I should have done more. Bobby Wesker says, "Yep, I put you all the time." Well, thank you. He didn't call me. Yeah, he did call me Big Dummy. I was going to say I didn't call him Screw Loose, but he did call me Big Dummy here. Yeah, so. Roberto. So now Roberto came out to Daytona Beach Comic Con and got all kinds of cool pictures. Probably, Roberto, if you're still there listening, do I have your permission to include the pictures that you took and posted to Facebook on a little something that I'm going to do? All I really want to do, I think, is just put together a little video that just that has pictures and the live video that we did to kind of like say, hey, here is Daytona Beach Comic Con. Here's what Silverline did. Here's our pictures. Here's some of the people we met. Here's some of the lives that we did, and then just go from there. So Roberto, let me know if you are okay with that. So Roberto is certainly is a supporter of Silverline, and we appreciate Roberto. And his son, Uni, is working on his own comics as well. He's worked hard. I guess I've been talking to him. Roberto was since he's about 14. I think he's 17 now. Thank you, sir. He says, of course, my friend, you can use it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But yeah, he was, I think it was about 14 when I first started talking to him. And he just got all these ideas. He told me the other day, he's got, I think, a 12-issue arc planned out. And so that's exciting to see. It's exciting to hear and watch him kind of go from just being 14 and just kind of talking about it to now he's getting pretty close to getting stuff done. And so that's exciting. Yeah, that's exciting to see. I got a spot on my camera. I can't tell if that's on my computer. You see the spot? It's right there, Curtis.
Right here. I do see it. Yes,
that might be on my camera. Let me
might be on the camera.
Yeah, let me see if I can clean that here.
Excuse me.
It's not going away. I don't know. And everybody listening to the audio recording of this later is like, yeah, what are they doing? For your information, I'll narrate as Roland gently wipes the lens, trying to remove a spot, which I don't seem to be able to remove. What the heck? Where is that? I don't know what that is. I just got a little spot there.
You ever see those old? I used to love listening to like the old Green Hornet radio shows and stuff like that, and it was great because they would tell you what they're doing while they're doing it. They say, Green Hornet's like, I'm gonna punch you in the mouth. The guy go, oh, you hit me in the mouth. Now I'm gonna kick you in the groin. Oh, right.
Yeah. Oh, this cup of coffee that you've made me tastes really well. Oh no, I spilled it down my front.
Exactly. Those things are great.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out what that is. That reminds me a little bit. You remember that that commercial that I think it was sort of like for a detergent, and they had a guy in an interview, and he had a spot on his shirt, and the guy doing the interviewing was just staring at the spot, and the little spot started talking. the guy who was trying to talk, he would talk, and the spot would go. It was really funny because you're like, it was so distracting. Like you couldn't look at him. You were looking at the spot. I forget what it.
You ever have that with somebody who's cockeyed? I know it's horrible to say, but if somebody's cockeyed, I just naturally my eyes kind of.
Yeah, you're like, like, and of course you know, like, which eye do I look at?
This one.
Yeah. And then, and do you ever want to kind of like move over so that you can
television?
Okay, yeah. It's like, are you looking at me? I'll shift over just a little bit so you can see me. Roberto says, my son is curious about Curtis with the whole martial arts background and how it reflect in his upcoming book.
Oh,
well, that is very cool. We just happen to have Curtis here,
yes,
who can answer some of that. So, Curtis, talk a little bit. You know, actually, and we will get to creator rights for those of you who are like, yeah, I came to hear about creator rights. So, talk a little bit about first. You know, for those who don't know, what is it? What is the Sifu? What style do you have? What do you do? And then how are you going to use that in the comic?
Sure. Yeah, definitely, Roberto. So, the term Sifu is the term for instructor in Chinese martial arts, or specifically like Kung Fu, which is what I do. In Kung Fu, oftentimes that's considered like a style, but actually Kung Fu is just a broad term for hundreds of different Chinese martial arts styles. So specifically the Kung Fu styles I do are Hong Ga, right? The Hong Clan style. I do some of what's called the Northern Praying Mantis, where you see the gesture like this. I also do a style called Doga, which is a rare style, and Tai Chi, and a little bit of other stuff. But those are my core things. Hong Ga, if you want to talk about in pop culture, where it's most well known is if you've seen Avatar, The Last Airbender, the earth bending style is based on the movements of the Hong Ga system that I do.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So when we see you doing this, it's not you're not talking up gang symbols. You're mad and you're about to go down on us, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, if you want a little bit of quick Kung Fu knowledge, what's interesting, you see us bow sometimes this way or this way, right? And it's like in some ways it's like a gang sign, but what it means is when you hear about the legendary Shaolin Temple being burnt down,
right?
There were 5 ancestors or 5 masters that fled the burning of the temple and went into hiding, and they spread their kung fu from the temple to the public, and so there became a symbol, and the symbol was saying that in China there's 4 seas and 5 lakes. So the saying is, when the 4 seas and the 5 lakes come together, all men are brothers. So when I make a fist, this represents the 4 seas. This represents the 5 lakes. And when I put them together, either this way, or I fold them together, I'm showing that everybody's unified to take over back the country from the tyrannical Manchurians that had taken over the country at the time. So this is the symbolism, and it's like a gang symbol. So, and each style has their own gesture. So if you were about to duel somebody, they would throw up their gesture saying, I represent this system and I'm going to fight you. And if somebody did the same hand gesture, you go, oh, we're like cousins.
We're brothers.
Yeah, we shouldn't fight. You know?
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So how are you going to incorporate all this into the comic book then?
Oh, all over the place. But like specifically, of course, like the fight scenes will be authentic kung fu techniques. There'll also be explanations of kung fu culture and terminology, and also even visually. The way the panels are laid out are a little bit more conservative, more kind of along the lines of kind of classical, like Watchmen and things like that, with a smaller panel structure, so that you can see the context of move to move to move. So that's kind of the main way that I'm going to depict how it's seen in the comic book. So you guys
very cool.
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that there's probably, unless there's probably going to be things in the comic that the average comic book reader won't pick up?
There'll be.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say that there's things for the people who are really well versed in it to kind of go, oh, but then there'll also be little asides. Like I used to love in comic books where you have the editor's notes and it would say, this, give a little bit of extra information. So you'll see things in it where it'll say, like, the person will say a terminology in the bottom. It'll say, okay, well, this is what this term means, or this is where this technique originates, things like that. So there'll be kind of a little bit of asides that'll help everybody.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool. And like now, will you throw any extras in, like, here's this move, this is the move that you talked about, if will there be anything like that?
Sure. There'll be I won't spill the beans just yet, but there'll be some multimedia element to it.
Sweet.
And so you will learn about Kung Fu, not just like terminology, but you'll learn about specific techniques and styles and things like that. And the character's development will go from a novice Kung Fu person to a master as you read the series, and you'll see the techniques reflect that. So that's
very cool. That's very cool. And of course, there's always going to be there'll be ways to connect and links to you and your school as well. So hopefully, as people see this, they'll be interested in it and say, hey, I want to learn how to do Kung Fu from a Kung Fu master, and they will be able to come to you as a Kung Fu master. And for those of you who don't know Curtis, and if you're thinking about it, so one of the things, let me toot his horn just a little bit. That's a lovely mug you have there, sir.
Oh my gosh, this mug here from Zazzle.com on the Silverline merch store. This is a brief commercial break, people. So and we got the mouse from Cat and Mouse, illustrated by Dean Zachary, and the Silverline logo right here on Zazzle.
Sweet. Yeah, so I just have to see you pick it up and like
He's laughing.
Yeah.
Hey, Kasisi.
LOL. Yeah. What's up, Kasisi? So one of the things that I think is very cool is that of course a lot of this is kind of come about as a result of COVID and the quarantines and things like that, and we won't get into all of that, those particulars. But I think I was talking with VJ today, and I was like, one of the things I think that we've learned from this is that a lot of us have jobs that we can actually do at home. It's like I don't have to go now. Obviously there's some that you can't really be a cashier or a clerk and do that work from home. Of course, a lot of places are replacing them with computers, but that's beside the point. But one of the things that you were able to do is you were able to take your school and I don't know if translate is the right word, but translate it into online classes. And so you've been able to open up. You're in the Los Angeles area, and so before, if I wanted to take martial arts from you as a master, I had to be in Los Angeles. I had to be able to go there, right? But now I can take classes from you virtually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in LA, but I have students in Texas and Nevada and all over the place, and that's kind of the fun thing. And then we have reruns, so all our classes are recorded. So even if you can't make the live class, you can go ahead and watch like a library of classes. So it's like having an exercise program every week. There's multiple new episodes.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Now, do they get so as a teacher, I have to ask this, right?
Yeah.
Are they graded? Do you like, so it's like, for instance, in my class, students do the work. Sure. I have to, I review it, I read it. I have a rubric that, I assign them a grade then, and I give them comments as to what they do well and what they don't do so well. Do you have something like that? Are they graded, or are they evaluated at all?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's commonly, right, you'll hear about like a belt system or things like that, which is actually a fairly modern convention that starts from the 1950s and onwards. So if you always wonder what.
And I would love for you to talk a minute about that, because for me, when you mentioned that, I'm like, what? That's Americans made that up. We did that, So I would love for you to talk about that just a little bit, because I would guess, and this is only a guess, I would guess that 95% of the people who know about let me rephrase it. 95% of Americans who think of martial arts think of them as belts. That you have to get your white, your yellow, your black belt, right? The black belt's the one. That's the guy you got to be afraid of, right?
Yeah.
But that's not a thing, right?
It's not traditionally a thing,
Okay.
but and if you need to look at it, you look no further than you watch the old movies that take place in ancient times. You'll never see a Shaolin Temple movie where the student has like a belt test and where they're graded and they get a different colored belt, because it actually started in Japan, with the founder of what's called Shotokan Karate. And Shotokan Karate, I believe, is what our other Silverline artist creator, Dean Zachary, does. And Shotokan Karate was being done in the Japanese college system. And so I think it's Funakoshi, who was the sensei, was trying to figure out how could he grade everybody, but also how could he show up at a different university and look out across the immense expanse of their gymnasium and know what part of the curriculum everybody was at. So he developed the belt system based on the idea that in the old days, the belt would start white, and as you exercise, it would get dirtier and dirtier and eventually get darker and darker and darker.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah, and then in modern times, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's definitely a very kind of scholastic way of grading people, but it's also sometimes used to great effect to make money, because you charge in a commercial school at each time that you get your next rank. And some people go one step further and they'll put stripes on the belt. So you may have 5 belts and they may be able to collect this many fees from the person. But if you put a white belt with a white stripe, that's 1 fee. A white belt with 2 stripes, that's 3 fees. So you kind of juice it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But again, there's nothing wrong with it. It as long as the person's learning the art well,
Right.
and they're earning that, that's fine. But the way that I learned was extremely classical, which is there is no belts. You just learn the curriculum. There's a set curriculum from A to Z, and you learn it, but there's no financial incentive for the teacher to push you along further. And you judge yourself based solely on your own understanding of the ability and your teacher's understanding of your progress. So it's much more like a classical musician, you know. So that's really kind of the main idea. But it's rarely done nowadays. And I was surprised. I had the grandmaster of what's called the Eagle Claw style. She's originally from Hong Kong, but she lives in the States now. And she came to visit my school, and she was asking me. She said, "Well, what about your school?" She was trying to figure out how my business is. So she said, "How much money do you charge? How many students?" And she said, "How much do you charge per belts?" And I told her, I said, "Well, I don't charge for belts." She said, "So you just give the belts away?" I said, "Well, no, I have no belts." And this woman in her 80s or so almost fell backwards. And she says, "Are you crazy?" She goes, "It's not like when we were in Hong Kong and kids." She goes, "You're an American, act American." So it was funny. It was
make some money.
Yes, make some money, you know. So, you know, but the way I always say it is, I enjoy that type of method. It's not for everybody, but
yeah.
I've often been told, "Hey, you should do it to get more money." But I'm always of the mindset, if it's just about money, I can go sell cars or I can do something different. Yeah. I don't need to change what I do and how much I love it solely for money. There's other ways to make money. So.
You know, it's so funny you say that, because this is a great segue. Because people often will, or I will often say this about comic books, is that if you're into comic books to make money, there are probably other things you can do that will make you far more money than comic books will ever make you, right? Yeah. It's like there's so many things. There's so many things you don't. Let's see here. Stephen Brown says, "Hey, he says, you don't have YouTube open." Is that the case? What do you mean YouTube open? I'm looking at it on YouTube right now. So do you mean as far as comments? Let me see if I've done something wrong. Since you are live.
Yeah, it looks like the video is live. I do see that.
Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, Stephen, because I see it live. So I think we're okay. Well, I'm going to use this part, Curtis, to segue into our next section. Sure, so please. You're doing Shadow Ghost. You're working on Shadow Ghost, which for all intents and purposes, we are planning to bring in early 22. So Stephen says it's still waiting. Let me. I think Stephen maybe pop back out and look at a different channel. Let me see if I can. Here's the channel that I have for the link that I have. Did that just go to Twitch? Oh, no, I went to all of them. You can try that one for YouTube. Jackson Rennick says comment test. So he's on YouTube. So he's okay. He's just
Nice as it works. Okay.
Thanks, Jackson. That's nice. I think Jackson just did some IT work for us, so thank you.
Yes,
Jackson.
that's right. He got in there and Jackson went in there and killed all the bugs, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, okay, so your comic is called Shadow Ghost,
Mhm.
and I've said it before, and I love your tagline, your pitch for this. It's a kung fu comic by a kung fu master. You own this. You created this. You own this. It is yours. It is Curtis Fujita's. That's your property, right? You can do with it as you please.
Mhm.
Now, we might get a little bit into the news. I'm gonna have to Google it here so I can kind of bring some of the stuff up. But why, Curtis, are you doing Shadow Ghost instead of busting your hump to do something like, oh, let's just say, shoot.
Shang-Chi.
Thank you. I'm like, I just what I was trying to say Shang-Chi. Yeah, Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Why?
Mhm.
Why?
Well, I think I think a lot of it goes back to when I first got into the industry, and that was with working with Roland specifically, was during the early to mid 90s, and the whole shift that started to happen, the whole paradigm shift with Image Comics and everything like that. And that was that idea of owning your own property, that one, you have your own creative control. You don't have to hand it over to somebody else. I mean, there's some amazing characters in the history of comic books, but there's always a certain season for a certain team. And then it moves on to a different team, sometimes willingly, sometimes not so willingly,
Right.
and in varying degrees of everything in between.
Right.
And to be frank, and I would think Roland would agree, you know, the amount of effort and work that people put into these characters is phenomenal, to the point where, and has so much impact that people and companies are still getting a lot of gas out of it financially. And the creators, not so much. I mean, you have to look no further than Superman and originally what happened to, you know, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster to really kind of get an idea. So the idea of you investing in yourself and coming up with your own property that you control and you have financial ability to kind of leverage, I think is very attractive, you know. And if it's your character, nobody has to say, well, Spider-Man wouldn't do that. Superman wouldn't do that, you know. So I think that's the biggest thing is I'm a big proponent as the years go by, and I love saying this, is I bet on myself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
is I have to bet on myself or nobody else will. So that's kind of the reason why. But I don't know what your thoughts are, because you came into this whole thing at the first dawn of the independent comic books kind of boom, you know.
Well, so and for maybe slightly different reasons. So but before we get to me, let me ask you though. You said something to the effect, as you've entered into this new phase of your life, you're less interested in doing that. You're more interested in Shadow Ghost.
Yeah.
Do you think this is, generally speaking, do you think this is something that as creators age, they think more of, let me create this for me. Let me create this because this is something that I want to do.
I agree. I mean, definitely, because I mean, on a business side, you know, there's the potential financial incentives. But you know, I'm 44 now, right? So at this age, I've lived a bit and I have a story to tell. You know, I can definitely feel that there's a lot more that I want to say nowadays, and I have a lot more to say with my life experience than I did when I was in my early 20s or teens or whatever. So I think it's that combination of having something creative and something to say, and a message I want to say that I feel is somewhat singular to how I'm going to depict it in comic books, but something that's relatable to everybody. And then there's also the business side, is I'm investing in myself, and I always feel as the years pass, and I think I may have said this to Roland, I feel like when you're younger, you write your life story in pencil. And what I mean by that is you write your life story, you have an eraser, you screw up, you make a mistake, you can go back and erase. And as you get older, you start to write your life story in ink, meaning you can't go back and erase anymore. And then as you get to the further end of it, you look at it and you realize there's only so much ink left in the pen. And so you really got to be very decisive about everything that you write, you know?
Yeah.
And nobody else is going to write it for you, nor should anybody else write it.
Which is funny, because
Not funny actually, but that's a fantastic comic analogy, right? Because
Yeah.
you first pencil, right?
Mhm.
When you do comics, you pencil it and then you ink it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, um, so I think that's fantastic, Curtis. So for me, I came into it into creator comics. That's the way I got into the industry, but it wouldn't have been my choice. Okay,
Mhm.
so part of the way I got into it is because I couldn't get work for from Marvel and DC. Right, I tried. I was submitting work to them, and of course, keep in mind this was the '80s, right? So I got in. Thank you, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I broke in right on the black and white boom, right? So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles published in 1986, a big boom of black and white or independent comics, however you want to say it. And so there were a lot of independents got their start at that point in time. Well, I met Stephen Butler and Mitch Bird about that time, and Stephen in particular, Stephen and I shared a lot of similar goals. We both wanted we were Marvel zombies, and we both wanted to work for Marvel. And so we swapped notes. It's like, hey, look at all my rejection letters. Hey, look at all my rejection letters. You think that's a lot, right? And he shared some great. He had some responses, some personal responses to his artwork. And it's funny because oh shoot, who's the guy? Roger McKenzie. Roger McKenzie actually made notes on some of his art one time, and he was sharing those with me. And they're just funny what he was saying, right? I look back at it now and I'm like, dude, you should have hired Steven. You were nuts not to hire Steven, right?
Yeah.
And Steven mentioned those to him at one point in time. And Roger says he had no recollection, no memory of it whatsoever. But Steven's like, yeah. And of course, I'm like, yeah, I remember you showing them to me, right? So for us, it was that we could not get into Marvel and DC because, we're in Mississippi. We weren't local to Marvel and DC, which, in retrospect, we found out that that's how a lot of the creators made it into Marvel and DC, is that they just walked up to the offices and got to meet them.
Yeah.
Right. And so much of any kind of business, but so much of this business is about contacts. It's about networking. Right. And so thanks to the Turtles and the boom, we were like, we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, we'll just do our own comic, right? We'll just do that. And so literally that's what we did. We're like, okay, well, we want to work in comics. We can't go work for Marvel or DC. Let's just make our own comic up. And so we did that. And that's kind of that, again, it's thanks to the Turtles. I always, make sure that people know, no, if it hadn't been for the Turtles, we probably wouldn't have had that boom. And so I'm always thankful that the Turtles existed, because it led to the boom, led me to the comics. And of course, then I got to go to Malibu and meet you and that kind of thing. So it was, for me, it was a way in, but my goal was something else. My goal was not to do creator comics.
Yeah.
Thomas Formani says, hey guys, so sorry I couldn't join y'all tonight. Me too, Tommy. We're going to talk about you. I'm not sure what we'll say, but we'll talk about you.
All the best things.
That's right. And John Martin says, check your messages. Dude, I'm in a stream. I'm going to go check my messages.
If you want to take a minute to look at that, I can kind of just talk a little bit more about create our own stuff.
Yeah. So do you know enough about the kind of the news this week to kind of encapsulate a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead.
sure.
I'll check messages, John.
Yeah.
While Curtis encapsulates the news.
So I'll kind of give my overview of it, and chat. Feel free to chime in if you know more, and Roland, of course, if you anything. So, as I understand it, a lot of it is, Marvel is getting in a legal situation with the families of the creators of several Marvel comic book characters, and essentially the deal is there's something going on where I believe the copyright, there's a certain time window where it's going to close. and some of the rights should revert back to the creators, or in this case, the inheritors of the creator's family. So that's essentially what's going down. Is there's, I believe, a lawsuit going, and the idea would be that these families would not only get some financial payments from all the licensing for movies like Spider-Man and things like that, but as I also understand it, they also will may be able to reestablish some creative control over how these characters are depicted. And so that's kind of the big thing that's going on right now, is this impending or current lawsuit. I don't know if that kind of is the rough of it, or if anybody else has any thoughts.
Yeah, I think there are. I think there are two, right? I pulled up some news here. This one's from comicbook.com, and it says Steve Ditko, Don Heck, and other estates issue a statement regarding the Marvel lawsuit. Now, Marvel is owned by Disney. Now, if you know anything at all about copyright law, you know that the copyright law has changed. Just in my lifetime, right? Or since I've been paying attention, the copyright law changed twice.
And Disney was a front runner on that.
Well, that's you beat me to it. That's why it changed, because the reason is the rights to Mickey Mouse were about to expire, and so Disney said, "Hey, wait, shouldn't we change the law? Shouldn't the law be something different? Oh, you don't think it should? Okay, here's money. Now, do you think it should be different? Oh, yeah, we thought so too." and so the laws changed, right? The laws changed primarily at the as John says, as a front runner. And for those of you who've been here, like, hey, what's that voice? John Martin has just joined us. Thank you, John. Glad you could join in,
John.
And so yeah, that's kind of what's going on, is that it looks to me like they're at it again. They're going to try to change the copyright law so that they can keep the rights to some of these characters that should be reverting either to their original creators or to public domain. I mean, when you think about it, Captain America was created in 1941.
He should have been public domain.
Should have been public domain. So
same thing with Spidey.
Yeah. Well, now Spidey actually probably has some time, right?
Spidey should have been public domain a few years ago. Actually,
no, you're wrong. You're wrong. Check that out. Spider-Man didn't come around until 1963, dude. Yeah, that's not, none of that stuff is in public domain yet. We're still in the 40s as far as public domain stuff goes. Stephen Brown says,
I thought that was part of the reason why there was an okay. I'll double check, because I think part of a reason for an issue
for the Steve Ditko thing.
No, because for the whole reason why they just couldn't do Spider-Man in their movies, even though they had that, besides the licensure thing with.
Oh no, that's all about licensing. Yeah. Stephen Brown says, yeah, they didn't want to lose Mickey. Stephen, looks like you've got a new logo there. I'm going to make the assumption that this is your comic, and so I'm hoping that we can. I can't read the bottom word there, but it looks like Red Raven.
I think it says Red Raven Illustration, so this might be Stephen's studio, maybe.
Okay, cool. And Wubba Fett says, "Hola, Wubba, love to have you on here, man."
Yeah.
And then he says most copyright laws have been driven by Disney. Yeah, absolutely, especially when it comes to changing the laws, right? It's just because, as Steven said earlier, they don't want to lose Mickey, right? Curtis, you probably remember this. You remember in 80, maybe 89 or 90, maybe even 88. Remember when Malibu published the Uncensored Mouse?
I knew of it.
Okay.
Yeah. That was like every year at Comic-Con. I think Dave Olbrich does. Dave Olbrich, the former publisher of Malibu,
yeah,
I think does some panel related to that.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So
but, yeah.
Yeah, that was done before I got out there,
Okay.
but I know a little bit of the story. The scuttlebutt that I remember hearing is that,
careful, you'll sound like you're in the Navy.
is it? Well, the idea was that
all the stuff that they did legally was public domain, right? So they just collected that content and that material, some of which, of course, was a little risque, and they just published it as the uncensored mouse. Well, of course, Disney was like, "Whoa, no, you can't do that," and they're like, "Hey, public domain," and Disney's like, "Hey, multi-million dollars."
Actually, with what they did, the mouse is back up for transitioning for public domain in 2023.
2023, yeah. So see, this I'm going to guess that this probably ties into the lawsuit that Disney is now.
I actually have a list of everything that should have been public domain already if it wasn't for Disney.
Yeah,
that includes Snow White, Winnie the Pooh, of course, the Mouse, Bugs Bunny, Buck Rogers would be public domain if it wasn't for Disney.
What about Donald Duck?
Superman, Batman.
Yeah.
I know. Of course, you said Cap.
Yeah.
I think.
Probably Wonder Woman.
I was wrong on the Spider-Man thing, but I don't think he had very many more years until Disney did that thing in '98.
Yeah. So and the only reason I knew that, dude, is just because so we're talking about the characters that were created in the late 30s and 1940s, right? So this is still part of what we're looking at as far as the public domain and what should be public domain. So we've still got at least another 10 years to go before we start getting into the new Marvel stuff, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, right? All of these things should be going public domain.
How many years was it supposed to be at first?
I can't remember what it was at first, but it's at one point in time.
Now it's 95 years.
It was 75 years after the death of the creator, right? And so what would happen? Or no, at one point in time, it was like 75 years from creation, right? So you publish it, boom, you got 75 years. The idea was like, you should have time to make your money, right? And so. And so then they changed it to 75 years after the death of the creator, because they were like, some of these properties don't get famous until the people die. And their progeny should be the ones that profit from that, and not some random corporations. And so this was part of the agreement. Okay, it's like, okay, well, now it's not, you could publish something when you're 20 and you can live another 60 years, and then what that copyright still belongs to you, and then you still get to keep it for another 75 years. And I don't know what it is now exactly.
It's 95 years now.
95 years. Okay. Is it 95 years from the death of the creator?
It just says 95 years period.
Okay.
Which if you go from, like, Mickey Mouse is supposed to be 2023. So
okay, so Stephen Brown says it's not his comic book. He says it was something he was trying out a while ago. Alex Sarabia says, "Hey guys, what's up, Alex?
Yeah, Alex.
we gotta get Alex on here too. Alex, I've asked him multiple times, and he's just like, for those of you who don't know, Alex is from Mexico. Alex, of course, is our artist, our penciler for Divinity. Alex is from Mexico, and English is not his first language. English is his second language. So that's okay. Alex, would still love to get you on.
Well, now, Alex, even here's a thought too. Alex, if you want to come on, you can talk, but minimally if you want, and you can always do drawing and kind of show people your process.
Right.
Because that's international language is art. So
that's right. Art is the international language.
Right? So there you go. Either way.
Right,
there you go, Alex.
1928 is 95 years from 2023. And that's roundabout when the Mouse came out, right?
Mouse was, early.
1928?
1928, I think so. I think that's when Steamboat Willie came out.
Yeah, so that's exactly 95 years. All right, the original copyright law was actually 14 years.
Wow,
really?
14
in
years.
1970, it was. In 1790, it was 14 years.
Wow.
Wow, boy.
Wow. You better make your money fast.
Yeah.
Well, people
Well,
weren't
they
living
didn't
that
live as long
either
back then.
then.
Yeah, a lot lifespan, right?
Yeah.
Why? It's funny you were talking about the films. I had heard that somebody commented, I think this is true. They said, you notice that Marvel is transitioning a whole bunch of the characters to the second generation iterations of Hawkeye, of Iron Man, with, like in other words, Kate Bishop, Riri Williams, all that, specifically because the timeline will be closing on the copyrights of those characters. So this is kind of future proofing them for films.
Interesting.
Yeah, which I thought was an interesting thought. Could be.
That is interesting.
Mhm.
I don't know though. So, and I think here's where some of the things get questionable, right? So, I know that the DC has what they call participation contracts, right? But if you create, let's just say you go to Marvel, and I realize these things probably already exist. I'm in DC, right? And so you're working on Batman, and you create Batdog, right? It's a derivative creation, so you don't get creator rights on that because Batman existed, and without Batman, you don't have Batdog, right? Or Batmite, or Batgirl, or Batboy, or whatever. Because it is a derivative idea of the original, it's not really an original concept, right? And so you can, like I say, I think Catwoman is an original idea, but not Batgirl,
Yeah.
right? So, so there's things like that. So, but some of these comics have been going on for so long. You look at Captain America, you look at Superman and Batman. Imagine all those characters that were created by the writers of those. I mean, I can just, as a Spider-Man fan, I can think of, dozens of secondary characters that were created just for the comic book, just for the Spider-Man comic book. Were not created by Stan Lee. They were created by the writer who was writing at that time.
Definitely. And I always think too, is as a creator and Roland, you have so much experience. I would be curious what your thoughts on this are, but I always think you never know what's going to be the popular character, what's going to be the popular book, or what's going to hit. It could be this throwaway character that, like when you look at the original appearance of Wolverine in, was it Incredible Hulk 180?
181.
Yeah, 181. And I think, so if you remember that, it was like, he was kind of a more or less a throwaway character, right? He was, He was like in the last panel of 180 and in the full issue of 181. But my gosh, look at what he became. So you never know. So I think that's why it's great to do your own creative own stuff, because, if that random character hits, you still have the rights to it, right? So
yeah. So Infrafan says creators like Bill Finger deserve better than work for hire. Companies should reward cultural changes with a functioning system and not overdo recognition to look better in the fans' eyes. And I think that's part of what we're entering. And I think this is part. Anybody who knows me knows that I am not a fan of corporations. Okay, I could go on probably an entire week's podcast about that kind of stuff. But I think I look back, and part of me says, well, you know what? In the 1940s, this is the way things were done. There wasn't the idea of the creators' rights and these things like that, right? So these guys, that's just the way things were. But then there's the other part of me that says, yeah, it is, and we can't fault Marvel and DC or Timely or whatever for doing things the way they did in the 40s. But what we can do is say, okay, look, you guys have made, you own this stuff, and we get that you want to keep it because it brings in so much money.
And you have made so much money off of it already.
That's it. That's the thing. Is like, look, you don't have to pay them billions, pay them thousands because you've made so much, and acknowledge the fact that, look, you guys created this. If it wasn't for this thing that you created, we wouldn't be making these billions of dollars. So here's an interesting number. And this is from MSN.com, talking about Disney sues Marvel creators family. It says over the past 13 years, Disney and Marvel have earned a staggering $22.93 billion. So you tell me the people who created those characters, shouldn't they get some of that? Now they're not going to. None of them are going to expect a billion bucks, right? But something.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's. I think at the same time, and this may not be popular opinion, but I also think, due recognition that there are other creators that bring these things to prominence. There are marketing teams. There are all these other people that create and perpetuate this thing. But definitely the creators should be okay. I don't know if you ever heard I heard Neil Adams give an interview, and he was talking about, God bless Neil Adams, not just as an artist, but as somebody for creator rights. My only encounter with Neil Adams in person, I still remember, was when I was working at Malibu, and I was a kid, and I had a sketchbook, and back then you could get lots of cool sketches from the artist, And I actually went up to Neil Adams, and I was like, "Oh, I'm a kid. I got all these other people to do stuff. Like, could you do a drawing for me?" Nope. Because he's a straight up businessman. Look, And I remember the two people that were like, "Nah, I'll pass." Were Gil Kane and Neil Adams, right? But I still remember hearing Neil Adams talk about when he took the charge to get the rights for to get things for Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster for Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I don't know which of the two that he was talking to, but there was a Superman Broadway play, I guess, at the time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was really popular. And he was talking to him about it. He says, what do you think about, the Broadway play? He goes, I'm so happy. And this. I heard it's great. And he said, what, you haven't seen it? And he said, no, I couldn't afford to buy a ticket.
Right.
And that is just heartbreaking. That the care for the creator, you couldn't even comp the guy a ticket to something based on his own thing. That's shameful. So
it is.
And to Neil Adams' credit, he took the charge and he did, he helped them out. I don't know. I think probably not as much as he could at that time. So
yeah.
Well,
and there's a lot of folks who don't realize. I know that Jim Shooter gets a lot of flack in the industry, and I never had to work with Jim Shooter the way some of these creators did. So I can't speak to that. I just know that I am a Jim Shooter fan from just the body of work that he has. Right. I hear you've heard all the stories, and so I can't speak to that. So Wubba says they never thought about the future at the time they were creating them. Proof that is Kirby and Sinnott and Ditko just giving pages away to pizza delivery guys that came into the office. So and that's part of how the industry's changed. And I think for me, part of it is, yes, we can't fault, because it is the way it was, right? And we can't fault Marvel and DC for doing business that way back then. However,
we can fault them for not being proactive.
For not fixing it
and changing with the freaking times.
Yes,
and having to be fought tooth and nail for it.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here talking about how Disney is suing the families, which, by the way, is a completely bad idea.
So,
almost. I mean, you can if it was a politician, it'd be political suicide.
Yes. So,
but Disney has gone after people for paintings on daycares.
Mm-hmm. It's there. So let's backtrack just a little bit. All right. So this kind of started a little bit. And this is from, how did this come up? The Jerusalem Post. Steve Ditko estate tries to regain Spider-Man, Doctor Strange copyrights. The notices of termination both state they go into effect in June of 2023. So the estate of Steve Ditko, the legendary comic book creator behind some of the most iconic, he's filed to take back the copyrights of two of his most famous creations, the Marvel superheroes Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. The notices were filed by his heir, Patrick Ditko, who's the administrator of his estate. Let's see here. As detailed on the website for the U.S. Copyright Office, both notices go back to both creators' first appearances in the pages of Marvel Comics. The notice for Doctor Strange, and then it has links for these notices, right? And so this is what happened first, okay? And then Disney says, okay, we see what's going to happen, right? So where's it at here? Disney is now suing, and this is from MSN.com. So Disney is now suing the families of Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Gene Colan, and other creators in a preemptive attempt to challenge copyright termination notices that have been or will be submitted by these creators' estates. So basically, the Steve Ditko estate files this termination, right? Which they can do. And so now
Which is
Disney
only
is
right because
Disney is
they're
saying,
not getting any compensation off of it.
right. And Disney is saying, wait, no, we want to keep that. And so others have kind of joined in as well. So this is kind of where some of this kind of originates from. Infofan says, plus, I can't imagine working under those circumstances would inspire creators to use their best ideas if they know there's a chance their creation can go off and leave them in the dust. Okay, and that's something that is thank you, Infofan, because that is a great segue, because this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. So, and I want us to be very careful because I don't want to go down this path too much, but we've all, if not us here, we've heard the complaints about current Marvel and DC and the lack of good content from them, right? Would you agree that that's the case?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So again, you can say, well, there's good stuff. I'm not going to make that argument, but in general, it's kind of the consensus that Marvel and DC don't create anything good anymore. And I would kind of argue that part of the reason they don't create anything good anymore is because they don't treat the creators right. Because here's the deal. If you get hired to go write Spider-Man, are you going to create something new for Spider-Man?
Probably not.
No, you're not.
I'm surprised Donny Cates did for Venom.
What did he create?
Null.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The King.
Well, that is a surprise.
Well, and also, sorry to interrupt, just to point out.
No,
I think we missed one here. I'm going to throw it up there. I think Stephen Brown just chimed in earlier and said they shouldn't cheat the creators.
Yeah,
and I think what a lot of it boils down to is it's there's a difference, unfortunately, in the world that we live in between what's morally ethical and what's legal. And it's just a shame that there's that separation, right? Because I think a lay person like myself would like to think that the law is there to hold up the ethics, but they're actually kind of two different things, especially in business, unfortunately. So,
on the other side of this, industry that is kind of melded together, the comics and TV and the movies, they've kind of begun to meld. On the other side of this, the guilds that on the TV and movie side, they're on strike. Last I heard.
Well, the IATSE is looking into going on strike, and the Writers Guild is going on strike.
Right, because because streaming was initially they weren't sure if they were going to make money off of it, so they were paying less than what they would for an active TV show.
I do remember
now
that.
It's very obvious that there's money to be made there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and they're like, okay, we need now to make our money, and they're like, oh no, we can't do that.
Definitely. And in 2007 was the first big writer strike in recent memory, and my wife was working in the film and TV industry, and it destroyed so many people's careers. But they were fighting for that early version of the streaming, digital media. And if you wonder why there was a huge surgence of reality TV around that time, it's because of the Writers Guild strike. When the writers went on strike, they went to quote unquote unscripted TV. And that's why for a couple of years, we had nothing but magnificent reality TV.
We did get Dr. Horrible out of it. So
that's true.
It's almost like the creators in the comic book industry need to do something almost like a similar style union.
Oh, listen, they have tried. There's been multiple attempts and I think Neil Adams was one of the chief guys to try to spearhead a comic creators union at one time. But now from my understanding, it's just not And I think part of it is part of the reason that unions don't work is because there's too many people out there who want the work. And so if Neil Adams is working on Batman at DC and he says I go on strike, DC says okay, fine. There's a Filipino artist over there who doesn't really care about your strike, and I'm going to pay him less than I'm paying you, and he's going to come draw Batman. So unions work when you can be unified like that, but
I think also with that right there, though, that with that in tandem with contracts would keep them from going to the Filipino guy.
And for the record, when we say Filipino guy, what we're speaking of is somebody from a different background that may not need.
Well, I'm just basing it based off of his.
I just mean international artists, right?
Right. I'm just using it based off of what his example was.
Of course, no. I'm saying for everybody's benefit.
So they won't think we're being racist and say,
all the creators, no matter where they're at, deserve to be protected and paid accordingly.
Well,
just because they live in a different country and maybe the cost of living is a little bit cheaper, or it doesn't size up to the dollar the way it is. So it's $5.
Brazilians are real popular right now, I think, as far as cheap comic labor, and that's not that's just that's not a judgmental thing. It's just that hey, these guys don't need as much money, so they're like, okay, yeah, I'll draw comic pages for you at a much lower rate, right?
But let's really look at it. I mean, if this is what the pay is here in the States, then it should be the pay for anybody who does the work for a company here in the States.
That is the problem, though, John, is that sometimes that is the case. The pay for somebody in a lower income country is the payment for somebody that is stateside.
Right.
And I'll say what kind of the elephant in the room is this, and nobody talks about this, is everybody's trying to change what the restaurant's cooking, but you're not working in the restaurant. So it's when we say Marvel should change this, DC should change this. What nobody's saying is, well, why don't you make your own damn comic book company and make your own money? Because I don't want to. I just like to draw. I just like to write. I don't want to deal with accounting. I don't want to deal with payroll.
Right.
That's something. That's a conversation that I think needs to happen more, because it is within the realm of possibility. It's just not what everybody wants to do.
Right. Yeah, Infrafan says, geez, how hard is it to do the right thing? Yeah, and this is talking when we were talking about corporations shifting and changing kind of what they're doing. He says, I think that's why the only creative energy we get is in redoing reinvented character stories instead of getting new material. Obviously, this is in reference to
pretty much what Hickman did with the whole X-Men books.
Yeah, just retail. Again,
like really, we got another Inferno.
And again, I think some of it is, these creative writers, they go there and they're like, I've got this great idea for this character. I'm not going to give it to Marvel because I don't own it. I'm just gonna bring Magneto back for the X-Men because he's Magneto, and I'm going to take this cool concept that I created and I'm going to go to Image with it, right?
Yeah.
Because then they control it. Then they have it all, right?
Or I'm just going to release it on Kickstarter.
Or I'm going to release it on a Kickstarter. I mean, it's something that's not Marvel and DC, something that they own themselves. Stephen Brown says they want to make money off of other people's ideas, but they don't want to compensate them for their efforts. And I would agree with that, because this goes back to the whole corporation thing, right? I like the product. Someone says, oh, what Walmart. And I'm like, here's the thing. I shop at Walmart because it's easy and it's convenient. Do they have practices that we don't like? I don't do enough research, but they're a corporation, so probably because I don't like how powerful corporations tend to be. If you just think about it, right? If you disagree, if you're working for Marvel and DC, again, this goes kind of back to the unions. If you're working for Marvel and DC and you don't like something, well, okay, you can quit. I'll find someone else to do the work. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I'm not saying it's the right thing, and obviously I'm saying it's not the right thing. But Wabbit says the artist unions never work
never work. There's always someone eager and hungry to break in. A union would have to tie in some contract to the companies where they can't do that. And I think that's kind of what John was getting at a little bit. Is it that it has to be something within the corporate that says you can't go and hire somebody else for
An example would be like electricians. You have electrician unions, and then you have freelance electricians who obviously do it cheaper than the unions will.
Mm-hmm.
But the unions have contracts with companies that sit there and state that they have to jump through certain hoops. And that the work has to go to those unions first before they could ever consider going to a freelancer that's cheaper.
Yeah.
Sure. And if I can chime in, I think, one of the things too is let's not forget, I mean, we all know it, but what the image guys did back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that they did it when they were on the top, not when they were on the decline, but when they did have the most to lose and the most to gain, which is usually how it goes, right? At the end of the time, right? But that's an example of kind of taking the fate in their own hands, and striking out on their own. I think that's really important. We acknowledge it. We know that they did that, but it's huge because
and also nudging another company and be like, "Hey, can y'all help us out here on this first round?"
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm so happy to be like I still remember I'm so happy to be such a tiny window in the history because I was just a kid, so I didn't know all the things that were going on in the background. So I went to a convention where Todd McFarlane was there, and you got to love Todd McFarlane. And I remember two things about his panel which were hilarious. The first one was it was at the big height of all the chromium covers, and he took Bloodshot issue #1, the beautiful Barry Windsor Smith full foil cover, and he pulled it up. This is how he started his panel. He goes, "Hey everybody, you see this?" And then he just ripped the foil cover off, threw it into the audience, and he goes, "Would you still buy this book if this cover wasn't on here?" He goes, "That's the challenge I'm asking all you guys. Are you reading your comics, or are you just buying them for these stupid covers?" And it's about as rock and roll as they come. But then at the end, I didn't know that they were only going to be with Malibu for a short time. And he says to the audience, "You guys like our image books?" Everybody's like, "Yeah." He goes, "And we're leaving Malibu next month." And I was, "What?"
Oh, you didn't know it then?
No, I didn't know. I know that was going to happen. But Malibu definitely helped them out.
Oh yeah, and it was always part of the plan. I know that a lot of people think, they let, but no. It was always part of it. That was kind of a deal that Dave, because Dave Olbrich knew Rob Liefeld, and so he's like, "Look, you guys, if you want to bail, we can help you out, right? We can do. You guys make the comics. We can help you out and get it into the market while you set up shop." And so it was always a temporary. Just a stopgap, right, for Image as they set up shop. But
I actually don't think a lot of people. I've actually come knowing y'all and hearing some of the stories. I don't think anybody really realizes how crucial Malibu being where it was for the industry, even though it was going through its issues at the time. Because if it wasn't for Malibu, we wouldn't have the coloring that we have. And we wouldn't have Image Comics the way it is right now.
Yeah. There's I think you're right. I think that of course, Curtis and I talk about this a lot. I think Malibu was definitely a very magical place. I think I think the four founders, Scott Rosenberg, Dave Olbrich, Tom Mason, and Chris Ulm had all kinds of foresight in what they did, what they built. They chose good people. I think overall they chose some really good people and made making comic books fun. I have never been a morning person in my entire life. But I didn't have troubles getting up and going to work in the morning at Malibu Comics. I did not. I did my
person when it comes to conventions.
In a normal situation, my alarm goes off at 6 or 7 o'clock, and I'm like, I don't want to get up. It was never that way when I was. I mean, yes, of course, if we were out at a convention or something like. But Malibu used to say, "Hey, take the next day off," And so, but it was never, my alarm went off and I'm like, hey, I get to go and work in comic books today. You know, it was never a big issue for me. Again, like I said, I'm not gonna say never because there are, you know, always things, but it was not something I had a problem doing. Stephen Brown said, I find making my own comics and drawing for myself than for anyone would be better making my own brand. You know, I think we talked about Image, and I'm glad you guys brought it up because they really had kind of completely. I always think about the Turtles because they're the ones, for me, they were at the forefront of the black and white boom, which got me in. But Curtis, you're absolutely right about the guys at Image because they had everything to lose and everything to gain, and you know, but it all boils down to, and for those of you who don't know about the kind of the founding of Image, it really boils down to the fact that Todd McFarlane said he couldn't get a shirt. That's right. It's like, I did the artwork for that T-shirt. Can I have a shirt? Right? And he couldn't get a shirt. And I think what happened is these guys realized that you know, they were doing the hit books and they were making the artwork that they were seeing all over the place, because this is a time when comics were doing, you know, gangbusters in the 90s, and they were seeing.
And I think Neil was still making some noise in the 80s about creator rights.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He was. And so they just like, you know, we made you guys a lot of money on these books, and they did. They made Marvel and DC a lot of money, and they didn't really want to change the way things work. I kind of laugh at times because if you ever hear Todd, you think, you know, Image would never existed if they would just given him a deadgum T-shirt with Spider-Man on it.
Yeah.
You think about it, right? Here, Todd, here's your T-shirt.
That's a what if. That's the next what if that should be on Disney Plus. Is what if Marvel conceded and gave the Image guys what they wanted?
Wubba says about Malibu, he said the sad thing was Bravura not lasting long. And for those who aren't aware, Bravura was an imprint at Malibu, in which some old pro guns came in, Howard Chaykin, Walt Simonson, Dan Brereton,
Jim
Starlin, Marv Wolfman. These guys came in and did their own thing. And Bravura was, Wubba says, amazing creators doing great things. And I agree. Those were some great books. And
Power and Glory by Howard Chaykin, I have to say, was awesome. I mean, what a great idea. And I probably shouldn't have seen the original pages given the age, because if you saw the original pencils, they were pretty raunchy, but it was basically like a superhero Cyrano de Bergerac, where you had a guy who posed as a superhero who didn't have any superpowers, and he was a coward, I think. And then there was a black ops guy that would do everything behind the scenes to make this guy look like a superhero, and he would get all the credit.
Yeah, and
it was such a cool idea.
Yeah,
it was a great one. I love that.
Yeah. So how do you guys, if you were to predict, right? And I know we can't do that. That's not what we do. But if you guys were to predict, let me see if I can change this. Woohoo! If you were to predict how this lawsuit is going to go, how the Steve Ditko lawsuit is going to be, and the others, and then how Marvel lawsuit is going to be, what prediction would you make?
I'd say forward.
Disney's going to draw it out as long as they can.
I'd say forward, settle out of court. That's and I say settle out of court because nobody wants to go toe to toe. Very few people want to go toe to toe with Disney as far as being in the legal battles. And secondly, and I hate to say this, unless those people who are from the estate, right, the progeny of these creators, actually care about the creations more than they care about the money and the payday, they'll settle out of court because they'll get what they want, which is the money. Now, if they deeply care about these characters and this intellectual property, right, and want it to extend for several generations, that's a different thing. I heard it said recently that there's this Chinese saying that there's the cycle of wealth, right, which is the first generation creates the wealth, the second generation spends the wealth, and the third generation squanders it,
Wow.
and then the cycle renews, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what's going on in the world today. We're in the third generation of a lot of stuff.
A lot of things that America is.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. What says Disney will win and screw the creators.
Disney has the firepower.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nobody, and it's really hard to match that because it takes those greenbacks to match the firepower.
Right. And I think, John, you kind of hit on, I think, part of the problem. You said they'll draw it out. And the problem with drawing it out is that
It forces them to take hush money.
it doesn't matter to them. They're like, yeah, we can settle this, in 10 years. We don't care. But when it's you, you're like, yeah, I want it settled now, right? So you and that takes money. And the problem is that no, they'll just file it. I don't know all the legal stuff, but they'll file an extension, and
Continuance,
and that costs money.
We can't make court. Look, can we move the date?
Mm-hmm.
All those little tricks.
Yeah.
Copyright law is confusing as it is now because of how many things they've done to change it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that's why there's a whole subsection of copyright lawyers. Malibu used to have one on staff. That was
Sorry,
that's okay. Malibu had a Will McGuire who that was his job all day long, was to protect the Malibu copyrights, and that's what he did. He would occasionally come to us. Hey, I saw this. Should I file something? And he would see that he would be looking through the catalogs, order the previews, the diamond catalogs, and he was all about protecting Malibu's content or marks, I think is what they call them, right?
And I remember Tom Mason, one of the founders of Malibu, his Dinosaur for Hires line. I don't know if you know the story, but I heard Tom say it several times. Was at the time we had a Malibu Interactive, which was the video game division, right? And there was some argument about Tom getting credit on the Dinosaurs for Hire game. And so what he did is he made the logo have his name. So,
right.
So it literally, when you see the wording with the font for Dinosaurs for Hire, it says on top Tom Mason's.
Right.
So because that was the official logo, they had to put his name on everything. And I have to say, Tom Mason is like probably one of the wittiest people I've ever met. But he will cut through you like a knife any day of the week. So you just got to be careful around him. He was very smart that way. Very smart.
We used to accuse Tom of going home and sitting down with a notebook, just sitting there thinking, what can I say? And just coming up with all of these witty responses, because throughout the day you would say something and boom, there's Tom Mason. Oh. And he would just smack you and you're like, it'd be funny, especially.
See, this lets me know me and Tom will get along very well.
Oh my goodness!
He put a hurt on all
John.
of
I love you, man, but I don't know anyone that can spar on equal footing with.
Well, see, my thing is I actually listen to what you're saying in conversations, and I pick things out that you say, and I save it for later, and I throw it right back at you. Which is why Scott's not living down the banjo.
Right? Yeah.
I still remember the worst I heard Tom say was like, I think it was my first week of working at Malibu, and it was like this. It was like the first office I was at was this kind of warehouse industrial thing, and I was in the back filing comic books, but everything was just partitionless, so you could hear clear across the office. Right. And Tom was in the bullpen talking with, and I won't say the person, but it was one of the founders, so you do the math. And the other founder said, "Hey, I got to go home and feed my dog," and he leaned over to the other guy and he goes, "Yeah, and he has a pet too."
Yeah.
And he was married at the time, so you do the math. It was just brutal, just brutal.
Yeah,
so brutal.
Yeah. He
me and Tom would have had fun.
Oh man,
would still have fun.
Yeah. Tom absolutely was fun, but boy, you didn't want to make him mad. I made him mad one time. And it's funny because I printed a lot of my emails out because this was in a day, I didn't know what happened. So I came across a whole bunch of my Malibu emails. And there was something we had talked once before about one of the holograms or one of the special editions. And I was like, hey, I'd kind of like to have a copy. And I forget what it was. And he was like, basically it was like he put me off a little bit. Yeah, I'll see what I can do, blah, blah, blah. And I can't remember. I think I was going to send it to somebody. I don't think it was for me. I don't think I would have cared at that point in time, but I can't remember if I was going to send it to one of the creators or whatever. And then, like I emailed him like in the next week, and it was like, nope, sorry, nothing sent. I emailed him again the next week, sorry, nothing. I emailed him again the next week, and then he came back with a scathing response that basically said, it's just, is your house in order? When you get your house in order, then you ask me this question. I was like, holy crap. Now, for those of you who don't know, I was the most on-time editor at the company. So yeah, the fact that he hit me with that made me go, ouch. There are things I still remember clearly. There are things that I cannot repeat over a live broadcast that Tom used to say to me.
I think that'll be
John,
the after show.
Yeah, John, you would love them too. Yeah. There are things that I can still hear his voice whispering, because Tom would do that sometimes. Somebody would say something and he'd lean over and then whisper in your ear. And you would just die laughing, right? Because it was funny, and it was only meant for you and not for anyone else out there. So, yeah, I don't know how we segued on Tom, but I think you're right. I think he was. I think it was brilliant that he put his name into that, and it was basically a fight that he could see coming. That he was gonna. This is my creation. I own this, and so if you don't want my name on it, I'm going to build it into the logo.
Genius, sheer genius.
Yeah. Stephen Brown said, though I wouldn't mind creating comics for someone else as long as I'm either compensated or keep the rights to my creations. Yeah, and again, I think that's where a lot of folks fall in when it comes to kind of a Marvel and DC. When you find folks that want to work for Marvel and DC, generally it's for the money. They're the ones who can pay the wages. They're the ones who pay the rates. Although I know today they're not near as much as what they were in the 90s. But still, they're the big show. So if you want to make money, if you want a career in comics, then that's usually who you're going to shoot for. You're going to shoot for Marvel and DC because then that's where you can get money. So, So my prediction.
I have a feeling about Malibu 2.0, aka Silverline.
Yeah. I hope that's a good feeling.
It may be a fart, but no, it's a good feeling.
One of the things. Speaking of that, one of the things I noticed at Daytona Beach Comic Con is that the T-shirts work.
You're selling the shirts, or you mean just
no.
just wearing it?
We all wore them, and so there was recognition around there.
Yeah,
Travis Gibbs shows up. Hey, Travis, what's going on, man? Travis says, I just love those characters. That's why I would want to write them, not the money. And you know what? It's funny that you say that, Travis, because in my class, one of the things I say is there's generally two reasons that people want to work for Marvel or DC. One of them is money, and the other is sentimentality. Yeah. And I can't tell you the number of times, and Travis didn't do this. I can't tell you the number of times that people will come to me and say, "Hey, I'd like to write the Ferret or whatever." And you don't have to pay me any money. I just love the character and I want to write with it. And I'm like, what? Don't do that. No, this is a job and we sell them and make money, But there is a lot of that,
I don't know. Sometimes as a creator, I will say this: you get to a desperation to where it gets the lake gets kind of dry.
Yeah.
And you're like, I've got to figure out something to kind of get eyes back on me.
Right. Yeah. Hey, Travis, if you're still there, I think Travis is currently running a crowdfunder.
Oh, cool.
Travis, pop your link in to the comments so that folks can go, because I apologize and I'm not fast enough on my computer to run to get it, but I think you're down to like your last 2 days, aren't you? If I remember correctly, I think Kalis and boy, I'm sorry, Travis. Travis is gonna smack me the next time he sees me. I cannot think of the name of it right off the top of my head. Anyway, Travis, if you're still there, pop the link into the comments, and folks, if he does this, he's on YouTube. Travis says he's got 33 hours left. So
Go back to
Travis,
Kickstarter.
yeah, Travis, put your link there. You guys should go look. He was chasing the last update I saw. He was chasing 200 backers, which is phenomenal. So 33 hours left. That's less than 2 days. So you guys need to go check out Travis's. It's called Expired. Thank you. I knew it. I backed it. 33 hours. So here's one thing I can say about Travis, you guys. You hear us talk about, I know if you've watched any of our videos that we do for our Kickstarters, we talk about this in this day of unfulfilled crowdfunders. Travis is not one of those guys. You're going to back Travis's book, you're going to get it. And that's one of the reasons that I am not afraid to tell you guys, go back Travis's Kickstarter, because he's going to deliver. So Travis put the link. I don't see it there yet. So go put the link and make sure you do that so that the folks will know. And you guys go check out Travis's. It's got 33 hours left. So showing up late is Aaron. And I know why Aaron showed up. Aaron says, I got something I just got to say. I just got to say
No. I actually just I tried to go find some place. I was supposed to meet up with these other artists and go drawing, and I couldn't find it. So I was like, I have nothing to do. I guess I'll just talk to you guys live on air.
Hey.
The power. That's right. I have to obey my lord. They're talking about. I think you guys have been talking about the Steve Ditko thing.
Yeah. Travis said he sent the link, but it needs to be approved on Ditko. So, Aaron, you chime in here, and I'm going to see if I can't get his link approved. Travis, send it to me on Facebook Messenger too, and I'll try to get it up here. Go ahead, Aaron.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, when I read the Steve, I don't think anything will come out of it. I mean, it'd be kind of cool if Steve Ditko family got the rights back or something compensated for Spider-Man, but I seriously doubt that'll happen. It's kind of unfortunate. I'm sure they'll just make like a settlement or pay out a settlement, and that'll be it. But I don't know. And Marvel and DC still do work for hire, don't they? They don't. Yeah. So I wonder. Yeah, I don't know. There was something. Did you guys see this? Something about somebody fighting for the Avengers, like Sony or Marvel's fighting for Avenger characters. Besides just the Steve Ditko, there was another story. I saw a headline, but I didn't get a chance to read the article. Does that sound familiar? Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe that was a Steve Ditko story.
I think that the Steve Ditko thing is several creators.
And Disney turns around and says, "Okay, Steve Ditko's family is going to come do this to us," almost like y'all are going to disrespect us. Okay, we're going to make sure that not just you, but all these other folks are put in line before they get an idea because of you.
Yeah. I don't know. They tried to
like the Mouse Mafia.
It's I guess the thing I always ask, if Steve Ditko really did care about this during his life, you think he would have fought for it more when he was alive? It seems a little weird that the family after the fact is fighting for these rights. You would think that, like, in other words, that it really matters to Steve Ditko, because it seemed like he kind of went off and did his own thing.
When did he pass away?
Steve Ditko passed away was it 2 years ago?
It's been fairly recently, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a comic book for a while.
Travis, I got your link up on Twitter. Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. So you guys go check that out.
Steve Ditko died June 29th, 2018. So yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
I mean,
but I never heard.
I've also noticed that there's been a lot of times when like older people just be like, well, it's too late to